Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. Bob Pompeani here, manning the controls. We have a lot to get into tonight. We're going to talk about Simone Biles at the Olympics. We're going to talk about the Penguins, Marc-Andre Fleury. But the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Steelers, who are about to play a preseason game for the first time in 2 years. And here is your panel. Joining us tonight, we have Josh Yohe. Great job with The Athletic covering hockey, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Below him, Jeff Hathhorn, sports director, 93.7 The Fan, a master of all trades. And to his right, the other box over there, I always get confused where I am in relation to where you guys are, is Colin Dunlap from the Fan Morning Show. Colin, we're going to start with you there, and we're going to get into the Steelers because they play Dallas coming up. It's been kind of an uneventful training camp. Some guys have done well. Some others haven't really played all that much or practiced all that much. Quarterback is going to be under the microscope quite a bit. Right now, it's Mason Rudolph's job to lose. Will he lose it to Dwayne Haskins?
Well, I don't know if he will or not, but I don't know what you guys have been reading or you guys have been seeing, but there hasn't been a whole lot emanating positive about Mason Rudolph out of camp to this point. Granted, it's very early, and that's understandable. I still, and I'm somebody that goes back to the very day that they signed Dwayne Haskins, it was so off base that some were saying, well, this is just a big flyer on a guy, and he's kind of just a glorified extra arm for camp and see how it works out. I've always thought it was going to be a lot more than that. I don't know if it'll be sooner rather than later. I think Dwayne Haskins will be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers after Ben Roethlisberger. I think he will have the inside track to do that. And frankly, just my opinion, he's more talented than Mason Rudolph. So I think he'll go into the season, maybe not as the backup, but at some point he'll be the backup. He's the better option for me. That's just very frank.
Well, he's got the better arm. Go ahead, Josh.
I don't think there's any question that he's more physically gifted. And this is a first-round pick. And let's not forget how young this guy is, okay? He is still a very, very young man. Obviously, the situation in Washington wasn't a good one. Some of it, I think, his own doing. There was obvious immaturity there. But you can't deny the talent. And everything we heard out of minicamp was how bad he looked. But now, all of a sudden, everything you hear is how good he looks. And who knows if that's a sign of things to come. But I don't think there's any question that they have some really serious belief in his talent. They're intrigued by him. I think all three of these guys are going to be around. We know who the quarterbacks are going to be. Maybe Mason's a quote-unquote safer choice if Ben gets hurt and misses a couple of weeks. But long-term, this guy, Dwayne Haskins, is more and more interesting by the day.
Well, I think the thing everybody could probably agree on is that it's Ben and then the three guys below him. Not that there's any competition or any narrowing of that gap between Ben and the other quarterbacks. Yeah, I agree. And Jim Colony said on Fan Morning Show that he saw more and more from Dwayne Haskins, and I would agree with that. He's starting to understand the offense a little better. He still has some issues with touch passes and some of the things we saw in Washington. And I would say he is gaining a little bit on Mason Rudolph, but you know, Mason has that Cleveland game. That's a nice feather in his cap to have. It was a game Cleveland needed to have. It was on the road, and he performed pretty well. And he's got that in a stadium that Mike Tomlin witnessed. So I think that puts him ahead of Dwayne Haskins. He has a long way to go, I think, to supplant Mason Rudolph, but he has opportunities to do it here in the preseason starting on Thursday.
Josh, we saw last year, second half of the season specifically, all of a sudden a ton of injuries were going on in the Steelers' inside linebacker game. There's no Devin Bush. Spillane got hurt. Vince Williams on COVID. They had to go out and bring in Avery Williamson and convert Marcus Allen. They're still kind of shallow there. What concerns do you have there and in other positions that you may think could end up being a problem for the Steelers when it comes to depth?
Well, yeah, Bob, I still think this should be a good defense, but Vince Williams didn't do them any favors by retiring on the first day of training camp. He really didn't. Spillane, he looks like a nice player. He's also a small guy from what that's worth. I don't know if he will get run down as the season goes on. He may not. Devin Bush is also coming off of a serious injury. Depth is an issue there. Let's be honest, it's also an issue at corner. Joe Hayden is still a really good player. He is old for a corner, guys. And you mentioned durability, Bob. It's a 17-game season now. That's certainly not going to help matters any. So far, so good on the injury front through a week of training camp. That's great. It better stay that way because while I think the Steelers still have a lot of top-end talent, especially on defense, man, there are depth issues everywhere, especially at inside linebacker. Is Ulysses Gilbert going to help? I don't know. I don't know if I want to see it. I just hope the top two guys stay healthy. And I think we can all agree we don't need to see Marcus Allen at linebacker or at safety or anywhere else on this defense. I thought he was horrendous last season, and I can't think that he magically has gotten better.
Well, I look at Devin Bush, and it's hard to put the injury aside, but let's just put the injury aside. Even when he was performing before he got hurt, I don't think he was performing up to the level at which they spent all the capital in which to draft him. I mean, you look at him, and one of the things that people talked about was his inability to cover tight ends, particularly across the middle, and he's not going to grow. He's not going to be somebody that's magically going to get 3 or 4 inches taller. Then when you were going into the draft, it was Devin Bush or Devin White. Those were the two guys that sort of separated themselves. Well, one guy, again, take the injury out of it, even when they were both healthy, one guy has firmly outplayed the other guy. I need to see a lot more from Devin Bush, injury aside, that he is a guy in which the Steelers spent all that much, went out on a limb and traded up to draft him and get him. I haven't seen the run of play that is worthy of a guy that the Steelers really bent over backwards to draft. He should prove me wrong. I hope he does. I hope he comes out in the first 4 or 5 weeks and is lights out. But I don't know about you guys. I haven't seen it match all that they had expected from him, even when healthy.
No, but I would say in that Cleveland game, he was probably having his best game. I thought he was really active. He was moving around, had a pass defense, also had a half a sack, I believe, in that game. He was playing well, and then, of course, the injury. I do worry about Marcus Allen and Ulysses Gilbert and what they could do if they are thrust into action. I would have said the outside linebacker before Melvin Ingram, because I think Quincy Roche is an interesting guy, but he needs a redshirt year. But I think it all goes to that secondary. It's a secondary league. And beyond James Pierre, man, I don't know what they have at cornerback. And then who's going to fill in at that slot position? You know, is Antoine Brooks going to be able to fill that role? Arthur Mollett, is he a real player in that secondary? I think that's so much is won or lost in that secondary, and they still have to prove they've got depth there.
Yeah, we're going to see it all begin to put on tape coming up on Thursday night. First preseason game. It's the Hall of Fame game against Dallas. That will be interesting. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some hockey. The Penguins didn't do all that much in the first couple of days of free agency, but free agency continues to play out. It's not a complete work yet, but they don't have Marc-Andre Fleury, who said today he will play this coming season. We'll talk about that and more when we come back. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown on KDKA-TV. The #1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by #1 Cochran, Go One Better, and by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.